Silence saved him for years, until one question forced the truth out and exposed a secret no one wanted to hear. They said the billionaire's son had never spoken a word. Not as a baby, not as a toddler, not even once. At least, that's what the report said. But wait, before we begin, comment on where you are watching from and please subscribe to ensure that you never miss out on any of my essential stuff tomorrow. Comment "I subscribe" below and I will personally welcome you to our community and comment on what you learn also. So let's get started. Inside the towering glass mansion overlooking the city, silence ruled one room more than any other. It wasn't the silence of peace. It was heavy, pressurized, the kind of quiet that made people uncomfortable, like they were standing beside something fragile that might shatter if they breathed too loudly. 16-year-old Ethan Cole sat by the floor-to-ceiling window, his back straight, his hands resting neatly on his knees. Below him, the city pulsed with life, horns blaring, people shouting, laughter spilling from open balconies. He watched it all like someone looking through glass at a world he was forbidden to enter. Behind him, a woman whispered. "He's very observant," she said carefully, "but he doesn't communicate." The man beside her nodded without looking at his son. He didn't need to. He'd heard the same words for years. Billionaire Marcus Cole, tech empire, private jets, political connections, doctors flown in from 3 countries, and still, nothing. Ethan didn't turn around. He heard every word. "He understands instructions," the woman continued, "but there's no verbal response, no attempts, no regression either. It's consistent. Consistent." That word always came right before the sentence Marcus hated most. "We believe he is permanently nonverbal." Marcus clenched his jaw. Ethan's fingers tightened slightly. No one noticed. The woman, another specialist, packed her files and offered polite sympathy before leaving the room. The sound of her heels faded down the hallway, swallowed by marble and money. Marcus finally spoke. "You can go," he said to the nurse. When the door closed, the room fell into its familiar state. A father and a son. Together. Completely apart. Marcus poured himself a drink he didn't want and stared at the reflection in the glass. He saw a powerful man. A man who could bend markets, control narratives, fix problems, except this one. "Your mother would have known what to do," he muttered. Ethan blinked. He turned his head slowly, just enough to show he was listening. Marcus froze, then scoffed at himself. Wishful thinking. The truth was simpler and crueler. Ethan didn't speak. That's what everyone believed. And so the world learned to treat him like a beautiful, expensive piece of furniture, always present, never addressed. Conversations flowed around him, over him, through him, as if he were invisible. Doctors spoke about him. Guests whispered around him. His father planned for him. No one spoke to him. Except Ethan heard everything. Every late-night argument, every hushed diagnosis, every sentence that ended with "he doesn't understand." He understood perfectly. Weeks later, the Cole Foundation prepared for its biggest annual charity gala. Crystal chandeliers, gold-trimmed invitations, a cause no one would remember by morning. Ethan would be there, of course, sitting quietly, smiling politely, silent. No one knew that the night meant to celebrate generosity was about to expose a truth so buried, even money couldn't hide it. And no one, absolutely no one, suspected that the person who would change everything hadn't been invited at all. She would arrive unnoticed, unwanted, and strictly warned to stay away from the boy who never spoke. The Cole Foundation Gala didn't begin with music. It began with rules. Staff moved like clockwork through the mansion, polishing marble floors already shining, adjusting floral arrangements no one would remember, rehearsing smiles meant to look effortless. Every movement had a purpose. Every person had a place. And for one group of people, the rules were simple. Stay invisible. A line of volunteers waited near the service entrance, all wearing plain black uniforms. Most were college students chasing resume points. Others were staff hired for the night. And at the far end of the line stood a girl no one bothered to look at twice. Her name was Amina. She was 16, same age as Ethan. Her dress was borrowed. Her shoes were worn thin at the soles. She stood straight anyway, hands folded, eyes calm. She had learned early that being unnoticed was sometimes safer than being seen. A woman with a clipboard walked down the line, stopping briefly in front of each volunteer. "Smile, no wandering, no talking to guests. If you see anything out of place, alert security." She stopped in front of Amina. And especially, the woman said, lowering her voice, stay away from the coal boy. Amina blinked. The coal boy? The woman sighed, irritated. The billionaire's son. He's special. He doesn't talk. He doesn't engage. You don't bother him. Amina nodded slowly. Yes, ma'am. Good. The woman made a note and moved on. Amina didn't ask questions. She rarely did, but the words stayed with her. He doesn't talk. Inside the mansion, guests began to arrive. Laughter echoed. Glasses clinked. Conversations overlapped in a blur of wealth and comfort. Amina was stationed near the east wing, tasked with directing guests toward the main hall. It was quiet there. Too quiet for a party this large. That's when she saw him. He sat alone near a tall window, just like a painting someone forgot to move. His posture was perfect. His suit was tailored. His face, calm, distant, almost unreadable. The billionaire's son. Amina slowed her steps without realizing it. He wasn't staring into nothing. He was watching people. Not in the careless way most people watched crowds, but carefully. Like he was collecting details, expressions, patterns, truths. Someone passed in front of him and spoke loudly. He won't respond, the man said casually to his date. Don't bother. Amina felt something twist in her chest. She'd heard that sentence before. Different words, same meaning, don't bother. She turned away, reminding herself of the rules. But as she walked, she felt it again. That pull. She glanced back. The boy's eyes met hers. Just for a second, no fear, no confusion, no emptiness. Awareness. Amina stopped walking. She didn't know why she did it. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was recognition. Or maybe it was the quiet understanding that sometimes silence wasn't absent. Sometimes it was armor. A voice echoed in her mind. The warning. Stay away from him. Amina hesitated. Then slowly she changed direction. She didn't know it yet, but that single step toward the boy everyone ignored was about to shatter 16 years of carefully protected silence. Amina didn't sit down right away. She stood a few feet from the boy, pretending to adjust a tablecloth that didn't need fixing. Her heart beat faster than she expected. Not from fear, but from the strange awareness that she was standing at the edge of something important. The boy didn't move. He didn't look away either. Guests passed behind her, their laughter swelling and fading like waves. Somewhere in the mansion, a violin began to play. Soft, elegant, carefully rehearsed. Amina cleared her throat quietly. Nothing. She risked another glance. The boy's eyes flicked to her hands, then back to her face. He noticed everything. That was when she knew. He's not absent, she thought. He's present in a way no one bothers to see. She lowered her voice, keeping it calm, respectful. Hi, she said. The word felt louder than it was. The boy didn't respond. Amina waited anyway. 5 seconds, 10. No one around them noticed. That was the strange thing about wealth. It could make people invisible, even in crowded rooms. She took a slow breath and continued, speaking the way she wished people had spoken to her when she was younger. Not slow, not exaggerated, just normal. My name's Amina, she said. I'm helping out tonight. Silence. She nodded to herself, as if he'd answered. That's okay, she added softly. You don't have to say anything. For the first time, the boy shifted. It was small, almost imperceptible. His shoulders relaxed just a fraction. Amina felt a chill run through her. She glanced around. Still no one is watching. She moved closer and carefully sat on the edge of the chair beside him, leaving space between them. Not crowded, not demanding. I get it, she said. People talk a lot. They think noise means connection. The boy's jaw tightened. Amina kept her eyes forward, staring out at the city lights so he wouldn't feel studied. When I was little, she continued, I stopped answering questions in class. That caught his attention. She could feel it. They called it shyness, she said with a faint smile. But really, I was just tired of being misunderstood. She paused. Sometimes, she added, being quiet is easier than being punished for telling the truth. The boy's fingers curled slowly against the armrest. Amina turned toward him then, carefully, gently. She met his eyes. They were sharp, intelligent, guarded, and hurting. She swallowed. Then she asked the question no one else ever had. Not the doctors, not the therapists, not even his own family. Do you stay quiet, she asked softly, because no one listens when you speak. For a moment, nothing happened. The music continued. Glasses clinked. Laughter rose and fell. Then the boy inhaled sharply. It was sudden, audible. Amina's breath caught, his lips parted. He hesitated, like someone standing at the edge of a cliff, unsure whether the fall would kill him or set him free. Amina didn't move, didn't speak, didn't rush him. And then, in a voice rough from disuse but steady with truth, the boy said, "They told me to stop." Amina froze. The world didn't end, but everything changed. Amina didn't react, not right away. Her body wanted to, every nerve screaming for her to gasp, to smile, to speak, but she didn't. She understood, instinctively, that the moment was fragile. Like a candle flame in a drafty room, one wrong move could snuff it out. So she stayed still. The boy's words echoed in her ears. They told me to stop. Not whispered, not imagined, spoken. His voice wasn't loud, but it was real. Deep, humans. The sound of someone who had been silent for so long that speaking felt dangerous. Amina breathed slowly, keeping her tone steady. "Who told you?" she asked, barely above a whisper. The boy swallowed. His eyes darted past her shoulder, to the open hall, to the people laughing, to the shadows where adults moved freely and loudly. His jaw tightened. Amina followed his gaze and understood. "Okay," she said softly. "We don't have to talk about it now." That's when he did something unexpected. He shook his head. Once, clear, intentional. "No," he said. The word came easier this time, still cautious, but firmer. "I can." Amina felt her throat tighten. 16 years of silence, and here he was, choosing his words carefully, like someone relearning how to walk. "Take your time," she said. "I'm listening." That phrase seemed to unlock something. Listening. Not fixing. Not diagnosing. Not correcting. Just listening. "When I was little," the boy said slowly, "I talked. A lot." Amina's heart pounded. He stared straight ahead as if afraid that if he looked at her, the words would disappear. "They said I was smart," he continued. "Too smart. I remembered things." His fingers dug into the fabric of his suit. "One night," he said, "I said something I wasn't supposed to." Amina didn't interrupt. She didn't need to. "There were people arguing," he went on. "My dad, his friends." I repeated what I heard. His voice faltered. "They got angry," he said. "Not loud, quite angry. That was worse." Amina nodded gently. "I was told," he said, "that some things should never be said out loud." The air between them thickened, and when I tried again, he added, "They said I was being difficult. Embarrassing." He laughed once, short and hollow. So I stopped. Amina closed her eyes for half a second, not because she was shocked, but because it made too much sense. Footsteps echoed nearby. A security guard passed, glancing briefly in their direction. His eyes flicked to Amina's uniform. She stiffened. The boy noticed. "They don't like when people sit with me," he said quietly. Amina forced a small smile. "I noticed." She stood slowly. "I should go," she said. "I don't want to get you in trouble." His head snapped toward her. "No," he said quickly. Too quickly. Then he paused, as if realizing how much he'd just revealed. "Please," he added, softer. "Don't." Amina hesitated. Then she sat back down. Across the room someone had finally noticed. A woman stopped mid-conversation, staring. Another guest followed her gaze. Whispers began to ripple through the crowd. "Did he just? No, that's impossible. I thought he couldn't." Amina felt it. The shift. The fragile bubble around them was cracking. And somewhere behind the scenes, the people who had built an entire narrative around the boy's silence were about to realize something terrifying. The sound they heard shouldn't exist. And once spoken, it couldn't be taken back. Amina felt it immediately. The moment had changed. Not because of the whispers, those were still distant, uncertain, but because the boy had leaned closer. As if the space between them mattered now, as if being overheard could cost him something. "People are watching," he said quietly. Amina followed his gaze without turning her head. The stares were subtle, curious, unbelieving, the kind that searched for proof before daring to believe. "We don't have to do this here," she murmured. He nodded once. "Please." Amina rose smoothly, like she was simply following instructions. She gestured toward the hallway that led to the east wing. "Come with me," she said, "just for a moment." He hesitated. Years of silence had taught him that movement drew attention, that obedience was safer than curiosity. But then he stood. The simple act sent a ripple through the room. A few heads turned. A woman's smile faltered mid-laugh. Someone whispered his name under their breath. Amina walked half a step ahead, just enough to lead without pulling. He followed. No alarms, no shouts, just a quiet retreat into the shadows. The hallway swallowed the noise of the gala, replacing it with soft carpet and muted light. The farther they walked, the easier it became to breathe. They stopped near a tall window overlooking the gardens. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. "You're not scared," he said finally. Amina shook her head. "I'm careful. That's different." He considered that. "I was scared," he said. "Every time I opened my mouth." She leaned against the wall, giving him space. "What did you think would happen?" she asked. He stared at the floor. "That they'd be disappointed," he said. "Or angry, or worse, relieved." Amina frowned. "Relieved?" He nodded. Silence made things easier for them. The words landed heavy. Outside, laughter drifted through open doors like a reminder of the world they'd stepped away from. "Do you want them to know?" Amina asked gently. He didn't answer right away. "I don't know," he said at last. "Once they do, there's no going back." Amina understood that kind of fear. "When people finally hear you," she said, "they don't always like what you have to say." His eyes lifted to hers. "That's why I stopped," he admitted. "Not because I couldn't speak." She nodded slowly. "But because you were punished for it." His lips pressed together. "Yes." Footsteps echoed faintly at the far end of the hallway. Amina straightened. "They're looking for you," she said. "Sooner or later." He swallowed. "My father." There it was. The name he hadn't said. "He thinks silence means safety," the boy said. "Control." Amina studied him. Not the billionaire's son, just a boy who'd learned too early that truth could be dangerous. "You don't owe anyone your voice," she said. "But you also don't have to hide it forever." He closed his eyes. When he opened them, something had shifted. Not courage. Not yet. Resolve. "If they ask," he said. "You didn't hear anything." Amina blinked. "What?" "I don't want you punished," he said quickly. "You broke a rule for me." Her chest tightened. "I'll be fine," she said. "I'm used to the consequences." That made him look at her differently, like someone seeing strength where they hadn't expected it. The footsteps grew louder. Voices followed. Amina stepped back. "This stays between us," he said. "For now," she replied. They returned to the gala separately, two people carrying a secret heavy enough to shatter a carefully built lie. And somewhere nearby, the man who had unknowingly silenced his own son was about to come looking. Marcus Cole sensed it before anyone told him. He was halfway through a conversation with a senator, smiling, nodding, performing the practiced ease of a man who owned every room he entered, when he felt it. The subtle shift in energy, the way attention tilted just slightly toward the edges instead of the center. Years in boardrooms had trained him to notice those things. Something was off. He glanced across the ballroom, scanning faces, searching for the familiar sight of his son seated quietly near the windows. Ethan wasn't there. Marcus frowned. He excused himself with a murmured apology and turned to his assistant, lowering his voice. "Where's Ethan?" She blinked. "He was just—" Her words trailed off as she looked around. Marcus followed her gaze. Empty chair. No sign of him. A cold unease settled in his chest. "Find him," Marcus said. Calm. Controlled. But urgent. Across the room, Ethan stood near the refreshment table, his hands clasped tightly in front of him. Amina had returned to her station, but her eyes flicked toward him every few seconds. She knew what was coming. So did he. Marcus spotted him and strode over, his expression carefully neutral. Guests parted instinctively. Power had a way of clearing paths. "Ethan," Marcus said. The name landed like a weight. Ethan didn't look up right away. Marcus crouched slightly, lowering his voice, the way doctors did when they thought compassion meant volume control. "You wandered off," he said. "You know you're not supposed to do that." Ethan's jaw tightened. Amina held her breath from across the room. Marcus noticed the tension, the stiffness in his son's posture. "Are you all right?" he asked. Ethan nodded. Once, clear, deliberate. Marcus paused. He straightened slowly. "Did someone upset you?" Marcus asked. Ethan glanced past him, toward Amina. Marcus followed the look. He saw the uniform, the borrowed clothes, the girl who didn't belong in his world. His voice cooled. "Who is that?" he asked his assistant. "A volunteer," she replied quickly. "She was assigned to the East Wing." Marcus's eyes narrowed. He turned back to his son. "Did she bother you?" Ethan's chest rose and fell. Amina felt her heart pounding. "Say nothing," she thought. "Please." Ethan opened his mouth. "I closed it." Marcus's phone buzzed. A message from one of the doctors on standby. "We heard reports, probably a misunderstanding." Marcus exhaled, irritation flickering across his face. He placed a hand on Ethan's shoulder. "You're tired," he said firmly. "Let's get you somewhere quiet." Ethan stiffened. "No," he said. The word was soft, but it existed. Marcus froze. The surrounding noise seemed too dull, like the room itself was leaning in. "What did you say?" Marcus asked. Ethan's throat tightened. Amina took an unconscious step forward. Marcus bent closer, disbelief warring with something far more dangerous: hope. "I said," Ethan repeated, forcing the word out, "no." Marcus's hand slipped from his shoulder. For a moment, the billionaire didn't look powerful. He looked afraid. "What did you just do?" Marcus whispered. Ethan met his father's eyes. He didn't answer. Not yet. And that silence, chosen this time, terrified Marcus more than any diagnosis ever had. Marcus straightened slowly, as if the movement itself might restore order. He forced a smile, small, controlled, and turned just enough to shield Ethan from curious eyes. "You're overstimulated," Marcus said calmly. "That happens. Let's get you water." Ethan didn't move. The silence stretched. Marcus felt it then. The eyes. People pretending not to watch, but watching anyway. Whispers forming, stopping, reforming. He leaned in again, voice lower, sharper. "Ethan," he said, "you don't need to perform." Perform. The word cut deeper than Marcus realized. Ethan's fingers curled into fists. "I'm not," he said. 2 words. Clear, undeniable. Marcus's breath hitched. A doctor across the room stiffened. Another whispered urgently into a phone. A Foundation board member stared openly now, her mouth slightly open. "This isn't funny," Marcus said under his breath. "Stop." Ethan flinched. Not because of the volume, but because of the familiarity. Stop. That word again. 16 years collapsed into that single command. Amina couldn't stay still anymore. She stepped forward, her voice measured but firm. "He's not performing," she said. "He's speaking." The room froze. Marcus turned slowly, his expression unreadable. "I didn't ask you," he said. Amina swallowed. "No, but he deserves." "That's enough," Marcus snapped. "Security." 2 guards shifted instinctively. Ethan's chest tightened. "Don't," he said quickly. The word came out sharper than he meant. Marcus raised a hand, stopping the guards mid-step. "Ethan," he said quietly, "who told you to say this?" The question wasn't curiosity. It was an accusation. Ethan looked at the floor. Amina felt the weight of the moment press down on her. This was the part where silence used to win. She stepped closer. "No one told him," she said. "He told himself it was safe." Marcus laughed once, short, disbelieving. "You don't know my son." She met his gaze. "You don't either." Gasps rippled. Marcus's face hardened. "My son has been evaluated by the best specialists in the world," he said. "He does not speak." Ethan lifted his head. "I do," he said. "I just stopped." The words echoed louder than any shout. Marcus staggered back half a step. "That's not possible," he whispered. Ethan's voice trembled, but he didn't look away. "You told me to," he said. The sentence hung in the air. Marcus's mind raced, searching for denial, for explanation, for anything that didn't involve guilt. "I told you to be quiet," Marcus said carefully. "Not this." Ethan swallowed. "You said my words caused problems," he replied. "That it was better if I didn't talk." Marcus shook his head. "You misunderstood." Ethan's eyes burned. "No," he said. "I understood perfectly." Amina felt tears sting her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. This wasn't about her. This was about a boy finally choosing truth over safety. Marcus looked around, realizing too late that the narrative he had protected was unraveling. "Everyone," he said loudly, "there's been a misunderstanding. My son is. I'm not broken," Ethan said. Silence slammed into the room. Marcus opened his mouth. I closed it. For the first time in his life, money couldn't fix the moment. And the lie that had protected his family was now the very thing destroying it. Marcus didn't raise his voice. That was how everyone knew he was angry. "Clear the room," he said calmly. The musicians stopped playing. Conversations collapsed into uneasy silence. Staff moved quickly, ushering guests toward the main hall with practiced smiles and murmured apologies about a private family matter. Amina felt a hand brush her arm. "Stay where you are," a guard whispered. Not threatening, not kind, just controlled. Ethan stood frozen beside his father, his pulse loud in his ears. Marcus placed a hand at the small of Ethan's back. Not gentle, not rough. Possessive. "Walk," he said. They moved through a side corridor, away from the lights and the whispers, into a private study Marcus used for negotiations that required discretion. The door closed behind them with a quiet final click. The silence inside the room was different, thick, expectant. Marcus turned slowly. For a moment, he just looked at his son, as if seeing him for the first time and not liking what reflection stared back. You embarrassed me, Marcus said. Ethan's shoulders tensed. That's what this is about, he asked quietly. Marcus faltered. You spoke, Marcus said, as if the word itself were dangerous. In front of everyone. After years. After you told me not to, Ethan said. Marcus rubbed his temples. You were a child, he said. You didn't understand the context. I understood the consequences, Ethan replied. Marcus snapped his eyes up. What consequences? He demanded. Ethan hesitated. This was the edge, the place he'd always turned back to before. Marcus softened his tone, just slightly. Tell me what you think happened. Ethan's hands shook. You said words can destroy things, he said. That people lose jobs, families fall apart. Marcus inhaled sharply. You repeated something you shouldn't have. You did that, he said. I was protecting you. No, Ethan said. You were protecting yourself. The accusation landed hard. Marcus turned away, pacing. You have no idea what kind of pressure. I do, Ethan interrupted. His voice cracked but didn't break. I lived with it every day, knowing that my voice was dangerous. Marcus stopped pacing. You think I wanted this? He snapped. A son the world pities? Ethan flinched. There it is, he said softly. Marcus spun back around. What? The truth. Ethan replied. You liked the silence because it was convenient. Marcus stared at him. I built everything for you, he said. Everything. Ethan nodded slowly, except a place to speak. Marcus opened his mouth. Nothing came out. On the other side of the door, Amina stood perfectly still. She wasn't supposed to be there, but she couldn't leave. She heard fragments, raised voices, silence stretching too long. Inside the room, Ethan took a breath deeper than any before. I'm not broken, he said again. I never was. Marcus's face tightened. Then why didn't you speak sooner? He asked. Ethan met his eyes. Because every time I tried, he said, I remembered how scared you looked. Marcus's composure cracked, just slightly, enough to show the guilt underneath. Outside, a guard cleared his throat. Sir, he said quietly, the doctors are asking to come in. Marcus closed his eyes. The world was knocking, and the truth was no longer willing to stay silent. The doctors entered the study like men walking into a courtroom. Two of them. Both are expensive, both confident, both are already defensive. Dr. Hargreave adjusted his glasses, his eyes flicking from Marcus to Ethan and back again. Marcus, he said carefully, we've received reports. Marcus gestured sharply. Explain. Dr. Hargreave turned to Ethan, lowering his voice, softening his posture. Ethan, he said slowly, can you tell me what's going on? Ethan stiffened. Amina, still outside the door, pressed her palm against the wall. She could hear the shift in tone, the familiar condescension disguised as kindness. He won't answer that way, she thought. Ethan looked at the floor. I don't like when people talk to me like that, he said quietly. The doctors froze. Dr. Hargreave blinked. Like? What? Like I'm not there, Ethan replied. Silence. The second doctor, Dr. Lin, cleared her throat. This is highly unusual, she said. Nonverbal patients don't suddenly. I was never nonverbal, Ethan said. Marcus's head snapped up. Then why did every test? Because no one asked the right question, Ethan said. Dr. Lin frowned. We ran extensive evaluations. Ethan lifted his gaze. Did you ever ask why I stopped talking? The doctors exchanged a look. Dr. Hargreave hesitated. We assumed developmental. Because it was easier, Ethan finished. Marcus's chest tightened. Dr. Lin shifted uncomfortably. Trauma-induced selective mutism is rare, she said. Ethan nodded. Not if you punish the truth. Marcus turned slowly toward her. Punish? Dr. Lin glanced at Dr. Hargreave. If a child associates speech with danger, silence can become a coping mechanism. Marcus swallowed. You're saying, he whispered, he chose silence. Dr. Hargreave nodded reluctantly. It appears so. Amina closed her eyes. The lie was unraveling. Lin leaned forward. Ethan, do you remember when you stopped speaking? Ethan's hands trembled. Yes, he said. I was 7. Marcus's breath caught. There was a meeting, Ethan continued. At home, Leigh was supposed to be asleep. Amina leaned closer to the door. I heard names, Ethan said. Money, promises, someone is crying. Marcus's face was drained of color. I repeated it at breakfast, Ethan said. I thought it was funny. He paused. Everyone went quiet. Hargreave swallowed hard. My father pulled me aside, Ethan said. He told me words have consequences. That grown-up thing shouldn't be repeated. Marcus closed his eyes. He said, Ethan continued, if you keep talking like that, people will get hurt. The room felt smaller. So I stopped, Ethan said, talking. Dr. Lin exhaled slowly. That's not a speech disorder, she said. That's fear. Marcus's voice was barely audible. Why didn't you tell us? Ethan looked at him. You didn't listen. The words cut deeper than any accusation. Dr. Hargreaves straightened. Marcus, he said quietly, this changes everything. Marcus nodded numbly. Yes, he said, it does. Outside the door, Amina stepped back. The truth had finally been spoken, but the consequences were only beginning. By morning, the story had leaked. Not the truth, not yet, but enough to shake the foundation Marcus Cole had built so carefully. A medical anomaly, a misunderstanding, a private family matter. None of it held. Ethan sat in the quiet breakfast room, hands wrapped around a mug that had long gone cold. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows, warm and indifferent. Across from him, Marcus flipped through his phone, jaw tight, scrolling through headlines that refused to soften. Billionaire silent son speaks at gala. Was the diagnosis wrong? Cole Foundation faces questions. Marcus set the phone down hard. This is spiraling, he said. Ethan didn't answer. He was used to silence. But this time it wasn't his. PR is working on a statement, Marcus continued. Doctors will back us. This will blow over. Ethan looked up. Is that what you want? He asked. Marcus hesitated. I want to protect you. Ethan nodded slowly. That's what you said last time. The words lingered between them. Across the hall, raised voices echoed briefly. Staff, lawyers, advisors already at work. The house felt less like a home and more like a war room. Ethan stood. I want to see Amina, he said. Marcus stiffened. That's not a good idea. She's the reason I spoke, Ethan replied. You don't get to decide if she disappears now. Marcus exhaled sharply. You don't understand what attention does to people like her. Ethan met his gaze. I do. Marcus turned away. In the service wing, Amina sat alone on a bench, her volunteer badge clenched in her hands. She hadn't slept. Security had escorted her out quietly after the gala, not unkindly, but firmly. She'd expected a call by now. She got one. Miss Hassan? A voice said. This is Cole Foundation Legal. Her stomach dropped. They met her in a small conference room downtown. No windows, no warmth. A man in a suit smiled without smiling. You've caused quite a situation. Amina sat straighter. I listened to someone who needed it. The man folded his hands. There are consequences to overstepping boundaries. I didn't force him to speak, she said. I just didn't tell him to stop. The smile faded. Media outlets are asking about you, he said. We need to manage that. Amina understood immediately. Silence again. This time, hers. Back at the mansion, Ethan stood at the top of the stairs, listening to his father argue on the phone. Words like liability and containment floated upward. He felt something settle inside him. Resolve. He grabbed his jacket. When Marcus ended the call and turned around, Ethan was already halfway down the steps. Where are you going? Marcus demanded. To speak, Ethan said. Marcus froze. For real this time. Ethan didn't wait for permission. He took the car keys from the marble console and walked straight out the front doors of the mansion. No escort, no explanation. Just the sound of gravel crunching beneath his shoes and the rush of air as freedom hit him all at once. For the first time, silence wasn't protecting him. It was threatening to erase someone else. Across town, Amina sat in the conference room, hands folded tightly in her lap. The man across from her slid a document forward. This is a standard agreement, he said. Non-disclosure, for your protection. She glanced at it once. It wasn't protection, it was a muzzle. If I sign this, she asked carefully, what happens? You go back to your life, he replied quietly. And if I don't? His smile returned, thin and practiced. Then the narrative won't be kind. Amina thought of Ethan's eyes when he spoke, the fear, the relief. She pushed the paper back. I'm not signing, she said. The room went cold. At that exact moment, a black car screeched to a stop outside. Ethan burst through the doors, breathless, eyes blazing. I won't let you silence her, he said. Every head snapped toward him. The lawyer stood slowly. This is highly inappropriate. Ethan stepped forward. So was telling a child his voice was dangerous. The words shook, but they didn't break. Amina stared at him. You came, she whispered. I said I would, Ethan replied. I'm done hiding. The lawyer raised a hand. Ethan, this isn't. I know exactly what this is, Ethan interrupted. It's fear dressed up as control. The room buzzed with tension. Ethan turned to Amina. I'm sorry, he said. They shouldn't be doing this to you. She shook her head. They've been doing it to people like me forever. The door opened again. Marcus walked in. The room held its breath. Ethan, Marcus said quietly, we can talk about this at home. No, Ethan said, we talk here. Marcus looked at Amina, then at the lawyer. Give us a minute, he said. The lawyer hesitated, then left. Marcus turned to his son. You're making this worse, he said. Ethan shook his head. I'm making it honest. Marcus clenched his fists. You don't understand the damage. I do, Ethan said. I lived it. He gestured to Amina. She listened when no one else did. You don't get to punish her for that. Marcus's shoulders sagged. The room felt smaller. I thought I was protecting you, Marcus said. Ethan met his eyes. You were protecting the lie. Silence fell. This time it wasn't fear that filled the room. It was true, and it was done being quiet. The cameras were already waiting. Ethan hadn't planned it that way. Neither had Marcus. But secrets never stayed hidden when fear began to panic. By the time they exited the building, a small crowd had gathered. Reporters, phones raised, voices overlapping. Ethan, is it true you spoke for the first time? Mr. Cole, was the diagnosis wrong? Who is the girl? Marcus instinctively stepped forward, his hand lifting in a familiar gesture meant to command order. Ethan stepped ahead of him. The movement stunned everyone. I'll answer, Ethan said. His voice carried, not loud, not rehearsed, but steady. The crowd fell into shocked silence. Yes, Ethan continued, I can speak. I always could. Gasps rippled. Marcus's chest tightened. I didn't because I was afraid, Ethan said. And because no one asked me why. A reporter pushed forward. Afraid of what? Ethan glanced back at his father, then forward again. Of being punished for telling the truth, he said. The words exploded. Questions fired faster now. The noise swelled. Amina stood frozen at the edge, heart pounding. She hadn't asked for the spotlight. She never had. Ethan reached for her hand. The gesture alone told a story. This is Amina, he said. She's the first person who spoke to me like I mattered. Cameras turned. Amina blinked against the sudden glare. She didn't fix me, Ethan continued. She listened. Marcus closed his eyes. The reporters turned on him next. Mr. Cole, did you silence your son? Is this about the foundation? Were you covering something up? Marcus stepped forward, but his voice failed him. For the first time in decades, he had no narrative ready. Ethan spoke again. My father didn't mean to hurt me, he said. But silence was easier than honesty. That mercy hurt more than accusation. Amina squeezed Ethan's hand. The crowd buzzed with emotion now. Shock, sympathy, outrage. A reporter turned to Amina. Why did you speak to him? She swallowed. Because no one should feel invisible, she said. The words went viral before she finished saying them. Later that night, the clips flooded the internet. He could speak all along. The girl who listened, silence as survival. Marcus watched it alone in his study. Ethan sat nearby, quiet, not out of fear this time, but reflection. I never meant for it to go this far, Ethan said softly. Marcus nodded. I know. For the first time, he said it honestly. Outside, the world debated blame and justice. Inside, a father faced something harder, the truth. Fame arrived fast, too fast. By morning, Amina's name was everywhere, her face looped across screens she didn't own. Her words were trimmed into captions, her silence between answers turned into speculation. She sat on the edge of her bed, phone vibrating nonstop. Unknown numbers, media requests, threats disguised as curiosity. Her mother stood in the doorway, arms crossed tightly. What did you do? She asked, not angry, just afraid. I listened, Amina replied. Her mother sat beside her and took her hand. That's dangerous sometimes, she said. Across town, Ethan woke to a different kind of noise. Lawyers arguing, advisors pacing, phones ringing without pause. The Cole Foundation had suspended events. Sponsors issued statements seeking clarity. The board demanded explanations Marcus wasn't ready to give. Ethan watched it all from the staircase. This was the price of truth. Marcus stood in his office, staring at a framed photo of Ethan at 7, the last year before the silence. I thought I was doing the right thing, he said quietly. Ethan didn't answer. He was still learning when silence was chosen and when it was owed. Later that day, Amina was called in again. This time, the tone was different. We want to protect you, a publicist said, sliding a new contract forward. Your story inspires people. Amina read the first line. Exclusive representation. Will I still be allowed to speak freely? She asked. The publicist smiled. Within reason. Amina pushed the contract back. I didn't risk everything to be controlled again, she said. The smile vanished. Outside, a small crowd had gathered, supporters this time. Handwritten signs, quiet solidarity. Ethan watched from the window of the building. He hadn't planned to be there. But when he saw her step outside alone, something pulled him forward. He stood beside her. No cameras this time, just people. "I'm sorry," he said. "I dragged you into this." Amina shook her head. "You walked out. I chose to stay." They stood in silence. Not the old kind. The honest kind. Inside the mansion, Marcus received the call. A major donor was pulling out. "The foundation's reputation," the voice said. Marcus hung up. He looked around the room he'd built with power and precision, and saw for the first time how small it felt. That night, Ethan spoke again. Not to reporters, not to lawyers, to his father. "I don't want my voice used as a weapon," he said, "or a shield." Marcus nodded slowly. "I don't know how to fix this," he admitted. Ethan met his gaze. "Start by listening," he said. Marcus swallowed. Outside, the applause had faded. What remained was harder. Accountability. Healing didn't arrive with apologies. It arrived with resistance. Marcus learned that the hard way. The board meeting was tense, filled with polished smiles and sharp undertones. Men and women who had praised his leadership for years now leaned back in their chairs, arms crossed, eyes calculating. "We need distance," one board member said carefully. "From the narrative." Marcus nodded once. "You mean from my son?" Silence followed. "That's not what we're saying," another voice replied. "But emotions are high. Public trust is fragile." Marcus stood. "My son isn't a liability," he said. "He's a person." The room shifted. Some looked uncomfortable, others are annoyed. Outside that room, Ethan waited. He could hear raised voices through the door. He didn't flinch. He was learning that confrontation didn't always mean danger. Across town, Amina sat with her mother at the kitchen table. Bills lay stacked between them. The attention hadn't paid rent. It had only invited scrutiny. Her mother sighed. "People think courage feeds you." Amina smiled faintly. "I'm not done being careful." Her phone buzzed. A message from Ethan. "Are you okay?" She stared at it for a long moment before replying. "I'm standing." Back at the mansion, Marcus found Ethan in the library, reading quietly. "They want me to step back," Marcus said. Ethan looked up. "From what?" "From everything," Marcus replied. "Until this settles." Ethan considered that. "Are you going to?" he asked. Marcus hesitated. This was the old moment, the one where control felt safer than honesty. "No," Marcus said finally. "I'm done stepping back from you." Ethan nodded. "That's new." Later that night, Marcus made a call, not to a lawyer, to the foundation's largest sponsor. "I owe you transparency," Marcus said, "even if it costs me." The silence on the other end felt heavier than rejection. Meanwhile, a new headline broke. "Was the girl paid?" Questions surround listening hero. Amina read it twice, then closed the browser. She'd expected it. What she hadn't expected was the knock at the door. A reporter. Amina didn't open it. She sat on the floor, back against the door, breathing slowly. Healing wasn't quiet. It rattled doors. It questioned motives. It demanded proof. Ethan watched the same headline on his phone. He typed, "They're wrong." Amina replied, "They always are at first." The night passed without resolution, but something held. Not fame, not outrage. Commitment. And that was louder than silence ever had been. The lawsuit hit on a Tuesday morning. Marcus read the email twice before it made sense. A civil action alleging emotional negligence and misrepresentation. It wasn't from outsiders. It was from within the foundation. A former partner. Someone who knew where the bodies were buried. Financially, reputationally, strategically. They weren't attacking Ethan directly. They were using him. "This is about leverage," Marcus said, pacing the office. "They think I'll fold." Ethan stood near the window, hands steady. "Will you?" he asked. Marcus stopped. "No," he said, "but it will get ugly." It did, fast. News outlets framed it as betrayal. Commentators debated whether Ethan was manipulated. Old footage was dragged up, private moments twisted into narratives. Amina watched it unfold from her phone, heart pounding. Her name trended again. This time, not as a hero, as a suspect. Who influenced the boy? Was silence really his choice? Her school called. Then her landlord. Pressure crept in through every crack. That evening, Amina received a message from an unknown number. "You don't belong in this world. Step out." She deleted it. Then another came, and another. Across town, Ethan slammed his laptop shut. "This is my fault," he said. Marcus shook his head. "It's my mess. You're just standing in the light." Ethan clenched his jaw. "Then I'll stand louder." He did. The next day, Ethan released a statement, unfiltered, unpolished. I wasn't coached, I wasn't paid, I wasn't rescued, I was listened to. The internet exploded, support surged, so did hate. Amina turned off her phone and sat on the floor again. The knock came at night this time. She froze. Then I looked through the peephole. Ethan. She opened the door without thinking. You shouldn't be here, she whispered. I know, he said. But I couldn't stay quiet. They sat on the floor, backs against the wall, listening to the city breathe. I didn't mean for this to hurt you, Ethan said. Amina smiled sadly. Truth hurts before it heals. He nodded. I'm scared, he admitted. Not of speaking, but of what it costs. Amina met his eyes. Silence costs you 16 years, she said. This only costs comfort. The words settled. Outside, sirens wailed. Inside, resolve hardened. Marcus watched security footage of his son sitting on a stranger's floor. For the first time, he didn't reach for control. He reached for trust. The backlash was loud, but it wasn't winning. The house felt different. Not quieter, just honest. Marcus sat at the long dining table with no advisors, no phones, no interruptions. Just him and Ethan. The place where conversations used to be avoided now waited patiently. I owe you something, Marcus said. Ethan looked up from his tea. Listening? Marcus nodded. And time. They sat in silence, not the fearful kind, but the careful kind where words were allowed to arrive when ready. When you were 7, Marcus began, I was afraid. Ethan didn't interrupt. I'd built something fragile, Marcus continued. Reputation. Influence. I thought if I could control information, I could control damage. He exhaled. I didn't realize I was teaching you to disappear. Ethan's throat tightened. I didn't disappear, he said. I hid. Marcus closed his eyes. I see that now. Outside, the media storm raged on. Inside, something quieter and more important was happening. I blamed myself, Ethan said. For a long time, I thought I was broken. Marcus leaned forward. You were never broken. Ethan nodded. I know. That was new. Marcus swallowed. When you spoke at the gala, I didn't hear my son. I heard a threat. Ethan winced, but didn't pull away. I don't want to be your enemy, Marcus said. I want to be your father. Ethan held his gaze. Then don't silence me when I make you uncomfortable, he said. Marcus nodded slowly. I won't. That promise felt heavier than any contract. Across town, Amina sat at the bus stop, striped jacket pulled tight, watching cars pass. She declined another interview that morning. A voice called her name. She turned. Marcus stood there, alone. I won't stay long, he said. I just needed to say something without lawyers. Amina crossed her arms. I'm listening. He took a breath. I was wrong. The words cost him everything. And I'm sorry for what this has cost you, he added. Amina studied him carefully. Apologies don't erase pressure. I know, Marcus said, but they can change direction. He handed her a card. No logos, no promises. If you ever want help, he said, without silence attached. She took it, not as trust, but as a possibility. Back at the mansion, Ethan stood in his old room, holding a box of unused speech therapy books. He set them down. I opened a notebook and began writing, not to explain himself, but to understand who he was becoming. The world still argued, but for the first time, Ethan wasn't arguing with himself. The noise didn't disappear. It softened. The headlines slowed. The outrage found new targets. The world moved on, the way it always did. But for Ethan, for Amina, and even for Marcus, something permanent had shifted. Ethan stood on the small stage of a community center that smelled faintly of coffee and old books. No cameras, no sponsors, just rows of folding chairs filled with people who had come because they wanted to listen. His hands trembled. Amina sat in the front row. You don't have to, she'd told him earlier. I want to, he replied. He took a breath. For most of my life, Ethan began, silence felt safer than honesty. The room leaned in. I learned early that words could hurt people, but I also learned that silence hurts the speaker. He paused, not from fear, but intention. I'm not here because I'm brave, he continued. I'm here because someone once asked me a question no one else would. He looked at Amina. She lowered her eyes, not wanting attention. That question gave me my voice back, he said. Applause didn't erupt. Respect did. Outside, Marcus watched through the glass doors. He hadn't been invited to speak. That was the point. Inside, Amina listened to Ethan with a steady heart. For the first time, the story didn't belong to the internet. It belonged to the people in the room. After the talk, a woman approached Amina. My son doesn't speak, she said quietly. Not because he can't, because he's scared. Amina nodded. Start by listening. That night, Marcus received a message from the board. "We want you to return." He stared at it for a long time, then replied, "Only if Ethan has a seat at the table." The response came slower. "Agreed." Ethan sat at his desk later, writing again. Not notes, plans, a foundation proposal, one not built on image, but access, listening spaces, safe conversations, no labels unless chosen. Amina read it when he sent it to her. "This isn't charity," she replied. "It's dignity." He smiled. The world had tried to turn their story into spectacle. They refused. Instead, they chose purpose. And that was louder than any headline. The auditorium was full, not with reporters, not with donors, with people. Parents, teachers, teenagers, faces carrying questions they'd never been allowed to ask out loud. Ethan stood backstage, listening to the murmur of voices beyond the curtain. His heartbeat was steady now, not because he wasn't afraid, but because fear no longer decided for him. Marcus stood a few steps behind him. "I won't speak," Marcus said quietly. "This isn't my moment." Ethan nodded. "Thank you." That alone felt like victory. Amina stood near the aisle, not hidden, not elevated, just a present. The lights dimmed. Ethan walked onto the stage. The room fell silent, not the imposed kind, but the chosen kind. "I used to think silence meant safety," Ethan said. "But silence is only safe for the people who benefit from it." A ripple moved through the crowd. "I was told my words caused problems," he continued, "so I learned to disappear." He paused. Then someone asked me why. The pause stretched, not awkward, but intentional. "That question changed my life," he said, "because it reminded me that silence isn't the same as peace." He scanned the room. "How many of you have something you never say?" he asked. "Because someone once told you it was inconvenient?" Hands shifted, heads lowered. Ethan took a breath. "This isn't a story about me learning to speak," he said. "It's about people learning to listen." The room didn't applaud yet. They were thinking. At the edge of the room, a man stood. "My daughter stopped talking after a teacher humiliated her," he said. His voice shook. "We thought she was broken." Ethan shook his head gently. "She adapted." A woman spoke next. Then another. The silence broke, not into noise, but into truth. Amina watched, her chest tight. She hadn't planned to be part of anything like this. She'd only done what felt human. After the event, Marcus approached her. "This doesn't end with a foundation," he said. "It ends with a choice." Amina met his gaze. "Whose?" "Yours," Marcus said. "You can walk away. No expectations." She thought of the girl she used to be, quiet because no one asked. Then Ethan, quiet because someone told him to be. "I won't be silent," she said, "but I won't be owned either." Marcus nodded. "Fair." Later that night, Ethan found Amina outside, sitting on the steps. "Do you ever regret asking me that question?" he asked. She smiled faintly. "No." "Even with everything it costs?" he asked. She looked at him. "Silence costs more," she said. Ethan nodded. The story had started with a boy who never spoke. It was ending with something harder. A world being asked to listen. Months later, the mansion no longer felt like a museum. The doors were still tall, the halls are still wide, but the silence that once ruled them had changed shape. It wasn't heavy anymore. It didn't demand obedience. It waited. Ethan sat at the kitchen table, not the formal dining room, with a notebook open in front of him. Sunlight spilled across the pages. He was writing again. Not speeches, not explanations, letters. He wrote to children who didn't speak, to parents who mistook fear for disorder, to adults who had learned too early that quiet was safer than honesty. Each letter began the same way. "You're not broken." Marcus watched from the doorway. He didn't interrupt. He had learned that listening sometimes meant stepping back. Across town, Amina walked into a small room filled with mismatched chairs and soft voices. No banners. No sponsors. Just a handwritten sign taped to the wall. "Listening circle. You don't have to speak." She didn't stand at the front. She sat among them. A boy stared at the floor. A woman twisted her hands. A man breathed like he'd been holding it in for years. Amina spoke only once. "You don't owe anyone your story," she said. "But if you want to share it, we're here." Silence followed. Then a voice, then another. Back at the mansion, Marcus placed a framed photo on the shelf. Not of awards, not of headlines, of Ethan and Amina sitting on the steps outside the city building. No cameras, no audience, just two people mid-conversation. Ethan noticed it later. "You didn't ask," he said. Marcus nodded. "I didn't need to." That night, Ethan stood by the window. The same place where he once watched the world without entering it. He spoke softly. Not to prove anything. I used to think my silence was who I was, he said. Now I know it was just something I used. Marcus joined him. And your voice? Marcus asked. Ethan smiled. That's who I am. The world never fully stopped talking about the story. Some called it inspiration. Some called it controversy. Some tried to rewrite it, but the truth didn't need defending. It lived quietly now, in classrooms, in living rooms, in moments where someone chose to listen instead of label. Amina locked up the community room late that evening. As she turned off the lights, she paused, listening to the echo fade. She thought of the question she'd asked months ago. Do you stay quiet because no one listens? She smiled to herself. The boy who once lived in silence had answered. And because of that answer, countless others no longer had to. Silence, she realized, was never the enemy. Being unheard was. And once that changed, nothing could ever truly go quiet again. If this story moved you, don't scroll away. Subscribe now, because the next story might be the one you need to hear. And tell us in the comments. Have you ever stayed silent when you should have been heard?